Well, women mostly get it because it's a lack of estrogen, which is a precursor to vitamin D. Vitamin A. Vitamin D. Vitamin D. I think it's vitamin D, which is essential for the absorption of calcium out of your diet. So it's actually a lack of estrogen in women that cause osteoporosis. So you have to have a supplemental calcium and usually vitamin D, either shots, which they could be getting vitamin D shots, or calcitonin shots, a hormone, to help get that calcium out of the blood and into the bone. Okay. In the bottom picture down there, you can see the difference between if you have too much osteoclastic activity, what happens to bones?
They break down?
They become weak because you're breaking down the what? Lamellae, which is made of calcium phosphate and collagen. Okay, so you're breaking that down. If you're breaking down the hard part of bone, what's going to happen to bone? It's going to get soft. It's going to start being porous, thus the word osteoporosis. Osteoporosis, you have very porous bones that look like sponges. Okay, that's because of the osteoclastic activity. If you look at bone remodeling 398, you see that the osteoclasts will go through bone, chewing it up, and then back behind it, you're going to get osteoblasts rebuilding it. Okay. Really, all you need to understand about bone remodeling is osteoclastic activity and osteoblastic activity in regards to hormones. Well, you might have to label that picture cutting cone and closing cone. That shouldn't be too hard. You should know the difference between a cutting cone and a closing cone, right?
Which one?
398. It's also on the bottom of 399.
Oh, this one?
The black and white one. Yeah, that one. Okay. So the cutting cone is going to be what type of activity? Osteoclastic. The closing cone is going to be osteoblast. Exactly. Okay. So that shouldn't be too difficult. Now, if we go back a couple pages to the hormonal control of blood on 394 and 395, PTH does what to blood calcium level? Actually says that. What is the stimulus for the release of PTH or calcitonin?
Low blood calcium.
Not low or high. So, but blood calcium is a stimulus for the release of PTH or calcitonin. So it depends on not how thick your bones are. It doesn't matter how, it's what's in your blood. Okay, that's the driving force for osteoclastic or osteoblastic activity. What's in your blood? Okay, if you have a high calcium level, you're going to have what type of hormone released? Calcitonin. Okay, which is going to have what kind of activity? Osteoblastic activity. If you have low calcium, you're going to have what type of activity? Osteoclastic, okay, which is going to do what?
Get more calcium into your blood.
Get more calcium in your blood by breaking down the hydroxyapatite, or the extracellular matrix, breaking down bone, okay? Think of, I don't know how many of you are political, but think of this system kind of like our government, okay? Your bones is the Federal Reserve. There's just a whole lot of calcium in there, and if you need more, there always seems to be a little bit more. You can't outspend the money that's there, or the calcium that's there. Okay?
Write our own calcium.
We can write our own calciums. Yep. Think of the bone as your Federal Reserve Bank. It's got calcium in it. Okay? And your blood is at you out there doing whatever you need to do. If you have money in your pocket, you're going to stick it in the bank. If you don't have money in the pocket, you're going to take money out of the bank. Okay, that's the way in which bone remodeling works. Okay, you're either adding calcium to bone, taking calcium out of bone.
So when you're depositing it, it's the calcitonin.
Correct.
When you're withdrawing, it's essentially then it's the parathyroid.
Exactly. And on some people whose bank accounts are low, they have mom and pop, they can go take a loan from. How do we do that with bone? Well, I should say this system.
Is that where we ask the kidneys to take more in the blood?
Yes.
Calcium
Well, actually, the calcitriol is released from the kidneys and goes to the,
GI tract.
sorry, parathyroid hormone goes to the kidneys, releases calcitonin, which, from the liver, which then goes to the GI tract and helps you absorb. Calcitriol is released into the GI tract, helps you bring in calcium from your food. So calcitriol is a form of vitamin D.
So if we have enough and everything's cool, then we just, calcium just.
Yeah, if you have too much, it just flows out. But trust me, you'll never have enough, so you'll always, calcium is like gold. Even if you need it and you have too much of it, you're still going to save it. Okay. I guess there would be a point where you could get rid of it. It's just so vital in the body, you'll see for nerve conduction, for muscle movement.
So does the calcitriol and the PTH, does that go hand in hand?
They work together, correct.
If one gets.
Not, what happens is the PTH goes down to the kidneys and releases calcitriol to go to the GI tract.
So if we're always absorbing the calcium from our food through the calcitriol, then we're always building it and they're storing it in our
Bones.
bones.
Well, if you have an excess in your blood. So if you're, through your diet, you raise the calcium levels in your blood to above normal, then the calcitonin is going to kick in, the PTH will be stopped, the calcitonin is going to kick in, and you're going to stick that.
That's if we're low, right? PTH gets.
Right, if you're low, you're going to stimulate PTH and calcitriol.
At the same time. One
Yes.
can't do one without the other.
Correct. They're both ways in which you're going to try and increase your blood calcium level. You're going to break down bone, and you're going to absorb it through your diet. Once you have the levels you need, then PTH stops, calcitonin stops, and calcitriol comes in, starts putting it back into bone until it gets too low, and then reverses. So it's also always a teeter-totter between calcitriol and PTH. I should say calcitonin PTH. Sorry. Does that make sense? You will get questions on that, I guarantee it.
Do we know
Probably
this?
a few of them.
Do we know
Yes,
on
that, there you go, that 396.
Anything on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
It's just what we just talked about. High pH or high calcium levels releases, actually I think it starts with high calcium levels, releases calcitonin, which puts calcium in the blood, which lowers puts calcium in the bone, which lowers your blood calcium levels. Once your blood calcium levels are too low, then PTH is released, which also releases calcitriol, which gets calcium out of bone and out of your diet and back into your blood. So it's a constant negative feedback loop. Okay. So that in summary, the blue writing and the red writing on the top of 396, you should be able to explain it, if not write it out. Understand it so that you can explain it to somebody. The PTH comes from the what gland?
Parathyroid.
Parathyroid. Okay. What is it when we don't have hydroxyapatite in bone in adults? Osteomalacia. Okay. And rickets in children. Does everyone know the difference between axial and appendicular skeleton? Axial, central, okay. So what's part of the axial? Your core. Skull, vertebrae, ribs, sternum. Okay. The appendicular is everything else. So your extremities and the bones that help connect your extremities to the core. Okay, so for your arms, what other bones are there? Clavicle and scapula. For your legs, you have the pelvic girdle. Very good. Okay. Okay, so be able to tell the difference between an appendicular and an axial skeleton. And then we're going to talk about 5 types of bones. Okay. Long bones, literally the question will say long bones are, and you'll have to say longer than it is wide. Okay. Short bones about as long as wide, flat bones wider than it is long. What it actually should say is wider than it is thick. I think that makes more sense. In my head, that makes more sense.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me either.
But for the test, you have to be able to label it as wider than it is long for flat bones. Because the sternum is not actually wider than it is long. It's wider than it is thick. I guess it just depends on which way you say wide. For the test, you need it wider is long. I think it makes more sense if you say wider than thick. But but you need to answer it that way. Irregular obviously has no definite shape, and a sesamoid is like a sesamoid seed. And what's the only sesamoid in the body? The patella. Exactly. I should say normally, under normal conditions, what happens? There are pathological conditions where every joint that is a synovial joint can grow a sesamoid bone. A little bone to cover and protect.
Is that disease where everything just does shrink to fall?
I'm not sure about that one. I think what you're talking about is acromegalia. Acromegalia is where bones start getting real big. They have hands that look like they're giants. Andre the Giant.
No, this is one where they just stiffen up essentially.
Huh.
I've seen it.
I'm not sure about that one. I don't know what that one is.
So then are bunions extra bone growth only?
No, bunions aren't at the joint. Those are just at places that you have more friction. This other one is where a sesamoid bone is going to grow inside a joint. Okay. Know the shapes, be able to identify the picture. Okay. And then 14, on these skull pictures, you only have to label what is in each slide. Okay, so the frontal, occipital, parietal, temporal, lacrimal bone, maxillomandible, zygomatic, ethmoid, hyoid, nasal, palatine, sphenoid, and vomer.
So basically everything with highlighted.
Yes.
And vagina.
It's pretty much the entire picture, but you don't need to know the xiphoid process or the squamous suture, the lamboidal suture, or the frontal sinus, or the cruciform plate. Actually, you need to know that one, the next one. But so there are some things that are on there that you don't have to have labeled, but for the most part, you need to know it. In that little red binder folder they gave you with your book, has these a lot bigger.
Do you know what page?
Book. There it is. She has it there in the back. That one.
Oh.
It also has the bones much bigger too. So you need to know the different parts of the bones. You can look at those a little easier in that one. Again, your ethmoid, syphenoid, and occipital bone, but you also need to know the